Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, August the 27th, and today we are live. I will be taking your questions and having a good old time in the process, so let's do it. All right. So Mike will be helping out here on his end. He's going to be texting me the questions that you all ask. I will give anyone who's in here or everybody that comes in a few minutes to get your questions to Mike. Any questions you have, gardening, farm related, whatever, soccer. You know, I love to talk soccer. So whatever you all want to ask, this would be the day to do it. I'm going to do one of these like every month. I think I did one last month, although I can't guarantee, I can't confirm at this moment if it was in August or September, but it was roughly a month ago. So we'll do one of these every few weeks. And yeah, we'll make sure to get, that way we can knock out a bunch of questions because I want to make sure to cover as much as we can. And while you all get your questions in, I'm going to do a little ad read right here at the top. We know it's peak season, you're busy, but the messages you send now are what drive renewals later. That's why Farmhand is offering free instant access to their farmer-built newsletter builder. No demos, no setup fees. Just drop your logo, upload your list, and start sending farm-branded emails that boost sales, engage members, and save you hours each week. Got free access today? Get free access today at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. One other thing before we kind of dive into any questions you all have, which again, you can just address those to Mike in the comments and he will send them over to me and I will go through as many as I can over the next hour-ish. Anyway, I will be at the CFSA conference. That's not there's one that's CFSA that I think is like Caskets Funerals Service Association or something. It's not that one, although I probably could own that conference. But this one is actually the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association, which I think is right, down in South Carolina. So I'm going to have Mike throw that into the chat and into the show notes so that if you all want to come and hang out there, we will do that. We'll be there. I think that's in November. It's like coming right up. So that will be super fun. I love South Carolina. It's a great state. We always enjoy when we go down there. We were down in Myrtle Beach not that long ago, kind of in the off season, and it was actually a lot of fun. Anyway, I'll get Mike to put that link in the show notes if he has not already. Would love to see you all there. Yeah, we're gonna, let's see. We are, make sure, like I said, if you have any questions, to get those into Mike and he will get them over to me. Right now it's like the most beautiful day out. It's been that way. The only trouble is that I like the beautiful days. I could use more of them, but I could also use the occasional rainy day. It wouldn't hurt. Just like 1 or 2 rainy morning, be perfect. Cause it is getting quite crispy outside. Our climate, when it gets crispy, we have so much plant matter that it just absorbs all that and it suddenly just turns to like dust, crispy, grass. So I remember, maybe I probably told this story before, but I was in North Dakota not that long ago, and they were like, oh, you should really come back in September. Like, it's beautiful here. You get to, it's very lush and green, and it's starting to, the fall colors are going to start coming. And I was like, I wouldn't visit Kentucky in September. October, amazing. September, dry, brown, not super exciting. It is everything is like senesced. Every grass is going to seed. It's a fun time. I love it here. The weather can be really nice. The temperature can be really nice, but I always suspect too that all that hurricane behavior down in the Atlantic often pulls a lot of the moisture out of the air and pulls some of that cold air down. So, I don't know that. I haven't actually looked that up. That's just what I've always assumed. But that always coincides with this time of year where it just gets dry and cool, but dry. And then we'll have I think next week we got another 90-degree spell. So we'll see. This coolness may not stick around, but it is still August/September. So still kind of very well in the summertime. Make sure, again, to get your questions in to Mike. It looks like we have our first one from Snow Crust Racer. I just kind of portmanteaued those a little too hard there. So they ask, how would you plan out a new garden? Do you hand draw, or is there an app you would recommend? This is a good question. I'm a fan of like hand drawing because I just don't like taking my time to learn an app I'm only going to use one time, right? So for me, I'd rather hand draw it out, and I like spreadsheets. So like I may hand draw it out or even get a drone photo of the area and then just kind of like draw over top of that on the computer using like, I don't know, whatever, I think there's like whatever's on Apple, the photo app thing, the editor. So you can use like all the lines and stuff, and we'll do that for ours. So basically, like if I was planning it out for the first time, I would probably get some sort of map or just draw it out. And then I do that by hand. And then I number like the beds and the plots, and then I put those on a spreadsheet. So as I'm going, like I'll draw it out a little bit, and I'm not that artistic, so it's really just like stick figures and stick trees. But then I will I will go through my spreadsheet and write each of the beds and each of the spaces for like whatever I'm planning to plant that year. And you could get really into it. Like a lot of one of my favorite things is just like some of the permaculture design stuff. Like those guys like go for it, and I always think those look really cool. But we never really went to that level. We kind of just map it out as best we can, and we think about like where we're going to put hedges and that sort of stuff. Also, it changes. Like I've talked about this before, but as we got growing on our current plot, we realized that like certain things that we'd originally anticipated about the soil weren't a reality once we got growing. Like we think there was some drainage that was headed into like old drainage that was headed into one of our one of our plots. It just stays really, really wet. And so yeah, that was kind of like surprise. We have to treat that a little differently. So it's fun to make those. I would maybe, like start with like a kind of rough sketch, a rough draft, right? And then work from there and edit it, amend it as you need kind of every year. We're still doing that, honestly. Like now we've planted a bunch of our older plots to more perennial trees. So those plots are going to look a little bit different as time goes on. But yeah, I mean, there are apps. For me, like, I don't know if I'm not going to use it regularly, for me, I don't know. I don't always see the value in that. I'd rather just figure out my own method, but some people love that stuff. So, and they can be very helpful. Definitely not something that, everybody is going to not love. Lots of people love that stuff. So anyway, great question. Hillby Time. I almost read it as Hillbilly Time, but either of those work. Hillby Time writes, do you worry about rodents in your compost? And if so, what steps do you take to keep them out? Worry about them? Not really. A little bit, maybe. Steps to keep them out. Like we've seen rats around. I got I've talked about this before where I'd rather nature handle, the animals and stuff. And as much as my, Charlie, our cat, is really good about, mice and moles and voles and that sort of stuff, rats, she's kind of like, nah, it's not my bag of tea. So, with that, we've used there's like these little electric, I think I've talked about these before, these like a little electric traps that you basically put a battery in. Those are pretty effective, for just like, kind of slowing the population down a little bit. Keeping them out, that's tough. Like rats are smart, so really it's about prevention. I mean, I know that, composters will use like, commercial composters like Arizona Worm Farm. They used, like a Jack Russell, like a rat terrier, something like that. Just to keep them out of their vermicompost. Cause that can be a problem where like, if you're doing large scale vermicomposting, that's like a rat paradise. And so, yeah, that would be my recommendation. If you're interested in getting one of those dogs, like if it's a very serious issue, then you can deal with it that way, or otherwise, like you can try and keep the populations in check and also try and encourage, predatory birds. It's not always that simple though. Like this isn't a rat, but we used to have, these, I don't know if I've told this story before, but like we had these domestic bunnies that somebody had just let go, and they just lived like on the street around here. And it was so perplexing because they lived like forever, and we couldn't figure out why the bunnies were not being killed by anything. Like these are fat, giant domestic bunnies and nothing wanted them, not dogs, not hawks, nothing. And I think it was just, we were all so perplexed at how they were living that nobody wanted to bother them. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of the bulk on that one. Thank you. And all right, so Crop Culture Farm writes, what should I plant in this bed I just prepped? Crop Plan says either arugula or Atlas carrot. Let me know, y'all. Both are getting seeded today. Depending on where you are, Atlas carrot is a longer season carrot. So you could still, in our climate, you could still pull off a longer season carrot, but probably just barely like that. Atlas is a really awesome carrot. For people that don't know, it's a Parisian market carrot. So it's the little round ones. They're not long. They're really small and just like circular, and they are delicious. Some of the best flavored carrots we've ever grown, and a lot of our chefs have a big love for those. Like they call them like Thumbelina carrots or something like that. So you can grow them pretty small, and you can grow them really densely. So you can get a huge yield off Atlas. It's a great crop. But if you want like full size, big storage size, Atlas, then it's going to be a little bit more complicated. It just takes more time. And also deer go bananas for carrots in the fall because it's one of the few things that's like bright green, fresh. So just those are some things to be aware of. If you don't have a lot of season left, arugula. Like if you're further north than us, you're going to have to go with the arugula. I'm afraid unless you're doing it in a tunnel, you're probably not going to get those, Atlas to a good size really by the time it really, really cools down at this point. Would be if you're much further north or much colder than we are. Or if you're in the southern hemisphere, it would be probably the time to plant those Atlas, because that's what we usually did, was do it in. We would usually plant those in like March 15th is like our first go in the field day for carrots, and so we would do those around March 15th. And then in the fall, we usually tried to plant them before, like middle August to guarantee like the best size. And then you get those really, really nice sweet carrots. Let's see. Good question though. Thank you. Katrina's Adventures writes, how does someone transition from a full-time office job into farming life and keep the bills paid, especially when starting off usually requires high upfront capital and minimal gross revenue? Well, this is the question, right? Like the big thing is it takes a lot of capital. It takes a lot of experience to do it well. There's no shame in starting slow, starting small, keeping that job to some extent. And, I also think like we can't overlook farm collaborations. I think that's probably the most sustainable way in some ways to go about it. Just think about it like you'd be starting any other business. There's no one right answer for this. I really want to hesitate to say like quit your job and go run and start farming, because a lot of people do that and a lot of people fail doing it that way. Do it pragmatically. Like if you don't have the land or anything right now, like that's a great place to be in, like starting the process now, thinking about doing your business planning, thinking about what a potential partnership would look like, thinking about like your market research, thinking about all that stuff, business plan, growth, strategic growth plan, all those things, like really dialing it in and figuring out what your farm would look like, where you'd want it to be. I think everybody always starts with land. And for me, that's probably step 6 or 7 on the list at tops. Like now, having done this for a long time, I recognize that. Like, because once you start with land, it starts gobbling up your capital immediately. And if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have a good plan, like it's just going to drain you. And I love farming. But I also at the same time, like there's no need to jump straight into it because I want you to be successful at it. Like, so that's why I recommend, thinking about, do you know somebody else that's like interested in it too, that you all can go in together and share that, that responsibility a little bit, share that risk. And there's a PS on this one, I think. I'm often told that renting or leasing a field is a good start, but working the land requires full-time commitment, while the everyday bills still require full-time pay. Yeah, renting or leasing a field is a good start. It's often cheaper. It's like often really cheap, depending on where you are. The land preparation for me, like if you can do it right now, then you can basically sit on it. If you can get it all prepped right now and then sit on it over the winter and really get your plan nailed down and get your garden plan and all that stuff nailed down, that would be great, because then, you can still keep your full-time pay and then move into it in the fall, in the spring. Also, like, it doesn't have to be a full-time gig. It could be much simpler. Like, you may not need nearly as much land as you want to start, and then you can establish a business and then grow it from there. Like if you have established like a small microgreen business, you could be like, oh, okay, I could add lettuce and carrots and, whatever else. So I'm going to need 1/3 of an acre for those things, or even 1/8 of an acre for those things. And then you start like looking to how to add on and slowly grow your business. Because it is easy to start with too much. I mean, a lot of people will call me or write me or whatever and say, hey, I bought, 10 acres. Now what? And I'm like, sell most of it. No, but like, that's a lot. Like 10 acres is a lot of land. You probably, just depending on what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to do animals, that's a different story. But if you're wanting to do vegetable production, you don't really need very much. So it just depends. It depends on your situation, where you live, where you want to end up. And also, making sure you're getting your savings down. You want at least like 6 months that you can take care of yourself without, getting into trouble. And that's the same way with running, having employees. You want to make sure that they can be covered for 4 to 6 months without running into trouble, because that's so stressful when you're like, oh, I got bills to pay. I got an employee to pay. Like, a lot of that just comes from poor management of the funds, of poor thinking about how much you're going to need to survive. So, I don't know if that's helpful. I know I'm not trying to be inspiring, but I'm also not trying to be overly inspiring. I want farms to be successful. So I don't want you to anyone to just jump in and quit their job if they have like a good job that they can slowly start on the weekends or start in the evenings and then kind of move on from there, because it's a lot of work. But I wish you the best. I hope it is successful. Anthony Bowman writes, short of space here in Northern Ireland, considering guttering on a south-facing wall to grow salads, etc. Any recommended crops for that kind of system other than leafy greens? Interesting. I mean, a lot of people like hydroponic sort of systems like that would probably say, strawberries are an option, leafy greens are an option. Maybe something like some ornamentals could be an option. Some sort of plant starts that you could sell that people could keep alive at their house, if you wanted to sell them. If you're just looking for stuff to eat, herbs is another option. What else do people grow in those? I don't do any sort of hydroponics, so that's not always my area of expertise. Not that I necessarily have an issue with it. Like, if it's the space you have, that's awesome. Like, just, grow some food. Sure. If it's, in a situation like that, I may, and you said it was south facing. You got the sunlight. So maybe you could get away with some bigger crops if you kind of like snuck in some soil there and you had a system for, potatoes and that sort of thing out of bags or out of, like bigger containers. You can do a pretty good amount of potatoes there. You got potential. I always think there's more growing space than people realize. Like I said, you don't need 10 acres. Like, you can do a lot in a backyard and in shade. If you have, like I always point out, mushrooms. Mushrooms are great because they are something that you could fill in underneath your porch if you wanted to. Like, your back maybe wouldn't thank me for saying that, but, you could put them basically anywhere. Hold on. I'm going to take a drink of water that I filled way too full. That was smart. Actually, it was ice and now it's water. So, didn't anticipate that one. All right. So let's see. I hope that's helpful, Anthony. William Curry, what's up? Has written, have you made any progress on your dream of cherries in Kentucky? I planted no, I haven't. But I did plant some sour cherry trees because that's a good native cherry here. And I'm hopeful for that. I love sour cherries. They make great pies and jams and that sort of stuff. When we were in Bug Tussle, we had this these neighbors that had these sour cherry trees that were super prolific, and birds love them, which is great. Except for they don't share as much, but man, the stuff that you could make from those sour cherries was just unreal. So probably not so much in the area of like Bing cherries or anything like that, but the sour cherries will definitely, I'm inching closer. Carl writes, I've been struggling to get my compost piles hot. Does the fact that I have the pile under a tree matter for like blocking water or sunlight, stopping it from getting it hot? No, I mean, the reality with getting it hot is probably just a lack of nitrogen. You really, like, one of the things that can happen, maybe water. I mean, if it's not moist at all, that could be a problem. Like you definitely want to keep it moist, moist enough where you can squeeze a little water out of it, but not where it's like mush. And what often happens for us, at least, like when we're having trouble with a pile, the reality is that we've been piling it for like 2 months, and it's just like it's slowly decomposed to the point that there's just not enough raw nitrogen in there to get it going. So like what we would do in that case is if we have like a kind of a loose bin collecting pile, we would like mow a bunch of grass into our little, like we have a little bag, a little like mower collector, like a little one, like a electric one. And we'll mow the pathways or whatever, and then we'll dump that into the middle of the pile, and we'll kind of mix it all together. And then we'll get it really, really good and wet, and then we'll cover it with a tarp, and that usually kickstarts it. So it could be moisture, it's probably nitrogen, or it could be, there's other factors, but in your case, it sounds like it's probably not the light or the water necessarily. Hope that was helpful, Carl. Barely a Farm asks, accidentally created excellent ground nesting bumblebee 12 to 15 habitat in a corner of compost pile. Leave them alone or turn the pile and let them rebuild elsewhere. I mean, they will rebuild. I would do it. If you're going to do it, I would do it now to not just like let them get too nestled in there before the winter and then you need it in the middle of the winter or something. Yeah, I mean, maybe just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off there a little bit. Yeah, that's a bummer. There was a situation the other day where I was prepping a bed for lettuce, and I saw some like large ground hornets in there, and I know those things are nasty, but they're also like beneficials. So like I was like, I don't want to do this to them. I also don't want to get stung, but I had to like prep over top of it, and it was fine. I mean, I'm sure they figured it out, and we'll just make another hole where I buried them. But yeah, that was kind of, sometimes that happens. Like bees, native bees and stuff, they actually really like bare soil. So, which is kind of a weird conundrum, right? Like, but the little patches of bare soil is often where you find them. And so, yeah, I mean, you try and be as gentle as you can, but that's a good sign that you have them, right? So hopefully they will continue on, and if you could, if it's possible to not disturb them, you could try that. But unfortunately, they're kind of going to be there. Let's see. Carl Hostetler writes, establishing a new garden and trying to figure out if I should just tarp the plot and till in the spring, or till now and plant a cover crop. Would the wet winter cause the soil to be compacted again? Okay, so, there's no one right way to do this, but if you're going to use a tarp, I would use it after tilling. And the reason I say that is because if you use the tarp over the winter, you're going to kill all the weeds and weed seeds on the top, but then you're going to till and bring basically a whole new flush up. So if you're going to till it, I would do it now. I would add a bunch of compost to, go ahead and get it as like, secured as possible, make that for one-time tillage worth it, right? Work in all that good soil organic matter so that it's nice and healthy in the spring. Tarp over top of that if you want, and then, plant it in the spring, or you work all that in, plant your cover crop, and then let the cover crop do the work over the winter. My preference is usually plants, but I don't know what your spring plan is. So if you need it super early, like if you want potatoes or something, maybe you could tarp those 2 beds or how many ever beds, and then leave the others in cover crop, and then come back to it in the spring and move that tarp over, or whatever you need to do. Yeah, I mean, there's options there. Like I always say, there's no one right way to do it. And let's see, Tim Shive writes, no-till farming is the opposite of permaculture, true or false? I mean, I think I think most permaculturalists would say that, no-till is part of permaculture, I would think, like not tilling the soil, not overly working it, trying to keep as many plant roots in the ground. I think all those things are, pretty shared. Yeah, I don't see any reason why they would be opposite. I think, the way that we look at it is more, I don't know, it's more of a production style. Like permaculture, I think of as more of a ecological restoration, not so much about like the economic side of it, but it's not necessarily like there's a lot of crossover there. So I don't necessarily think that would be, true or false. Let's see. And I think I have a question from Patreon member coming up relatively soon, asking me more about permaculture. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Michelle Van Ziel, Sorry, Michelle. I hope I pronounced it even vaguely correct. Part of the fun of my job is getting people's names wrong. I do it a lot. Zone 5, I really never succession plant and should. Do you have a suggestion? It depends. Like if you mean succession planting in terms of like, I want lettuce all year, right? Then you should definitely do it. Like succession planting is just part of gardening. Planting is just part of gardening, really. You're always sort of succession planting in terms of, like what we do is we have lettuce every single week. So we always have a succession going in the ground and coming out of the ground. So we're starting it, we're planting it, and we're harvesting it every week. And so that way we never have a gap in our lettuce. And I'm assuming that's what you meant by succession, unless you mean like interplanting and that sort of stuff, which is kind of a different thing. Like if you want to have lettuce and then you want that lettuce to take the space while you're growing your tomatoes, that's more of like an interplanting thing or like a relay cropping thing, which is a little bit different. But really it's just about knowing how much you can eat and how much you can handle or how much you want to sell. I think succession planting is a good goal for most people, especially as they're beginning in gardening, just because it teaches you to think more on a calendar basis with your garden and not like a, plan it and forget it sort of basis. Like a lot of people just put everything in at once and they're like, good, we're done. We'll weed it a couple times and we'll harvest. But if you're thinking in successions, you're like, all right, this bed is going to get this crop, this crop, this crop. And then once those are done, then it's going to get this crop, this crop, and this crop. And then you're just kind of like, keeping the garden going all summer. So it's not plant it, forget it, get a bunch of weeds, harvest what you can, and then try it again next year. That's what often happens. Let's see. Justin Van Dyke asks, Jana Farms here in San Diego. What's up, San Diego? I love San Diego. What varieties would you consider to plant on the embankments we created terracing to grow vegetables? The terraces are over 100 feet and as tall as 20 feet, erosion, pollination. What varieties would you consider to plant on the embankments? I'm assuming you mean like vegetables here. Created terraces to grow vegetables. Yeah, okay, so you said that. It depends. Like if your terrace is like sort of south facing, you could do like warmer weather crops. If it's sort of northern facing, then maybe you could, have some of the colder season crops. But really in that climate, you're not getting super, super hot necessarily, and you're not getting super, super cold. That's a lot of good year-round production. But there's tall as 20 feet, which I'm trying to picture. Like, is it a 20-foot tall terrace and then it goes over? That's very interesting. You could do lots of stuff that, it would be very fun to have stuff cascading down the sides of those terraces. I could imagine what's that the cucamelon, that sort of thing could be fun. You could probably grow all sorts of stuff down the sides of those that would just sort of cascade down. But our friends over there at Sage Hill Ranch Gardens do smaller terraces. I mean, they're certainly not that, they cover a lot of ground, but the terraces themselves aren't that high. Maybe head height in some of them, or maybe a little taller than that. But those are, that's very cool, the way that they did things there. So we've done a couple videos with them. You could check out what they're doing, but they do everything. There's no limit to what they grow on those terraces. As far as I know, I mean, they grow a wide variety of vegetables and they just continue to expand, and it's very cool. It's one of my favorite looking farms just to look at it. So it's just built right into this hillside. That's Sage Hill Ranch Gardens. They're not far from you. Let's see. A rum gremlin, fun to say. What would be the best crop to sell at farmers markets to yield the highest dollar amount for the beginning part-time farmer? Well, part of that, the highest yielding and highest profit crops are usually the faster crops like radishes and lettuces, baby greens, microgreens probably being the top in terms of profitability. But if you look at a market and they have all those things already, then it's not going to be that high profit, because you're going to have to compete on price and you're going to have to compete on people, already selling those things, and probably already having an established market. So part of the answer to that is, what is the niche that you're trying to fill? If you go to the market and nobody's doing any summer lettuce, then that may be the answer, because that's what we've done for a long time. It's just like nobody wants to bother with summer lettuce, so we'll do it. And then you have things like like radishes, any of those fast turnips, arugula, like I said, microgreens, that sort of stuff is probably your highest value, highest profit stuff, because it's the least cost. But then, some of the other crops can be, once you get into that 40, 50, 60-day period, like you start getting carrots and squash and that sort of thing, they're not quite as profitable. But if nobody's selling them and you can charge a little bit more, you can make a little bit more money doing those crops. So, it depends. It's all contextual, right? It just depends on your market. All right. Maureen, thank you for that. It's a good question. Maureen Ajwang writes, how do I manage pest and disease threshold the first season of turning a conventional farm to open field organic? I'm scared I might not harvest anything within the first season. This can be complicated. It's not anything I've had to deal with personally, but certainly depending on what crops were there before, if you're trying to grow, for instance, on an old vegetable farm and they were growing a bunch of brassicas or something, it may be, something that you want to look into to investigate, like what were they growing in those fields before, so that you can avoid doing that same thing yourself. Like you may want to avoid those crops for a year or two just to get through the pest and disease and get those cycled through there. Maybe it's all the normal stuff. You want to get good soil health down. You want to get some good compost down. You want to make sure that the compaction is addressed. You want to make sure that your moisture is good. Just all the normal management things. And you'd be surprised. Like it can take a while to get a conventional plot turned to a regular plot, or in our case, like a very compacted plot turned into a plot with decent health on our clay soil. It can take a little while, but if you're using the, good soil practices, it may not be as bad as you fear. But I also wouldn't just like go and risk it. But I wouldn't do that anyway. I wouldn't recommend anybody be like, all right, I've quit my job and I've planted everything in my garden, and here's hoping. I want you to be successful again. So, and then also use insect netting and that sort of stuff if you can, just to as insurance, just to make sure that you're not, getting any pests that you shouldn't, or that you don't need to, like avoidable pests. I mean, it's a tough situation, but I think it's cool that we're thinking about converting conventional lands to organic lands. That's awesome. Good luck on that. Green Mandan. That's fun to say. What's the best winter greens for South Kentucky? Oh, best winter greens for Southern Kentucky. We've grown Claytonia. I'm assuming you mean out in the field. Chickweed. You'll find that chickweed's super excited about the winter. We've grown Claytonia, Minutina, and this was when we were in Southern Kentucky. There are some kales and collards that will go pretty far into the winter if they're dry. If it's not. If you keep them covered right out in the field. Let's see, what other greens? Kale, we always grow kale all year in the tunnel, and you could do it pretty far into the winter. Same with lettuces. You can grow pretty much year round as long as you're covering and uncovering every day in the tunnel. And arugula, spinach. I don't know how I missed that one. That was probably the most obvious. Spinach is a really good one because you can grow it right out in the field. A lot of times I'll plant my first spinach round right around Christmas. And then that'll be done, and that'll be ready to go in March. So I'll just, sow it directly in the field and cover it. And then in March, it's ready to go. And it will bolt relatively fast, but you get a good first cutting before anybody else has it. And it's just ready to roll. I don't know. Hopefully that's helpful. Andrew writes, hi, Jesse. Really appreciate the knowledge you continue to share. Thanks. I wanted to ask what agronomic practices you employ to help your crops deal with high rainfall environment season. Well, I've got a swear jar that helps. Otherwise our biggest issue I think is with us, there's no easy way to have any amount of even mulched surface because we're on somewhat of a hillside, and deal with the water. It just comes from absolutely everywhere. And we, mulching, certainly any sort of carbonaceous mulches help. That definitely mitigates that. So that would be hay and straw and that sort of stuff. We don't have access to good straw here where we are. We haven't found any good organic straw, but hay, we have a guy that doesn't spray, so we'll get hay from him sometimes. And that's only for certain crops in certain areas, though. So we can't do that for like carrots or areas that we want to plant carrots because we're putting a bunch of weed seed down. So, yeah, I mean, just really, really thinking about how the land lays and making sure that it can drain. Those are all things you kind of have to do in the beginning when you're setting up gardens. And I've tried a bunch of different stuff to do it in situ. And it, it has mixed results. Sometimes can be successful. It can sometimes be a total mess. So that's fun. While I'm talking, I want to mention that our friend Clara Coleman has she does like the Winter Growers podcast, Real Farmer Care. Maybe I can have Mike. I didn't prep him for this, but maybe Mike will put a link in the show notes to just get, if you all want to support them. Clara's doing great work, and she, helps a bunch of farmers to get started and get going in their first season. So you should just make sure you're following Clara and all of her work. She's so awesome. She's done a lot of work for us, and we just love. She's amazing. She's a wealth of knowledge. That one. So anyway, we'll move on. Let's see. Jason Grinch writes, hello from Vancouver, Washington. Hello from Vancouver, Washington. Got me there. Best cover crop for a quick biomass bump between now and winter, zone 8B. Best cover crop for a quick biomass bump between now and winter. Probably you could do honestly, maybe like peas still would be the best one because you're going to get a lot of below and above ground biomass. You could even mix in some like sorghum Sudan grass or something that's going to die in the winter, right? AB, you're probably going to get a pretty good hard frost. But that could be a cool option. And I like the idea of, let's see, what other good sorghum Sudan grass is a really, really good biomass producer. You could even throw some like millet in there or some, I'm trying to think of stuff that would die pretty easily for you, assuming that's what you want. If you want it to go over the winter, though, I would wait a little while longer that you're seeing that you're in 8B, but you could get into, your ryes and vetches and that sort of stuff would be, and vetch and 8B maybe risky, but rye at least. I mean, sky's the limit there. I would avoid something like buckwheat because it's just not going to give you any biomass. Same with most of the beans rather. Peas do pretty well, but the beans are often not a ton of biomass. Peas, if they're planted densely enough, though, I feel pretty good about that. All right, let's see. And if anybody else has any thoughts on this, feel free to put those in the comments as well. What are this is from Thomas Van Wert, who writes, what are some of the most overrated crops and what are some underrated crops? I guess it depends on what the rating is. If you're talking about like flavor or something, or if you're talking about production, I think those would be two different conversations. I think, here's my hot take. I think the Sun Gold is a little overrated because it splits so incredibly easy. Simultaneously, flavor-wise, it's great. So is the Carmen. Like the Carmen is an amazing pepper. That one is underrated. I feel like everybody who's ever grown Carmens and tasted Carmens probably loves them, but I always feel like they're still underrated somehow. The Stocky Red Roaster is pretty good, but I also feel like that's a pepper that's like maybe a little, like gets a little bit too much attention. Great flavor, good producer, but it's a little harder for me to sell. Like because it's a little thinner. It's like people can envision what they're going to do with something like the Carmen just by the size of it. But something like the Stocky Red Roaster or one of those others, great flavor, a little harder to sell. Also, I think, underrated crops. I always think okra, honestly. I think, who was I talking to about this? Ray Tyler from Rose Creek. We had a back and forth once about how much we love okra, and it's a kind of underrated market crop. It's not super productive. Like it's not going to be super profitable, but it doesn't take a lot of pods. Like you can sell those at a decent price because not a lot of people grow okra. It's a beautiful plant. It's nice. It's a plant that most people don't grow. So we like to grow okra, and it is the worst to pick though. And once you get used to it, I mean, now I don't pick it with gloves or anything, but I remember when I first started picking okra, I was like, this shouldn't even be legal. This is outrageous, but delicious stuff. And I love okra. I didn't grow a lot of it this year, but I kind of regret that. Let's see. I don't know if that answers your question. I off the top of my head, those are the ones that came to mind. Let's see. Scott Wachman writes, good morning, home gardener and science nerd. Awesome. I have several fruit trees and would like to grow something useful in their part part to full shade in southern Florida. Any ideas? Yeah, I mean, in southern Florida, sure. Like basically any of your greens, any kales, any collards, any lettuces, any of that stuff, I think would be fair game. A lot of the stuff that's going to be harder for you in full shade is fruiting stuff, but in southern Florida, like you may be able to still get away with cucumbers and squashes and that sort of stuff in partial shade. Because it's so hot down there. A lot of people I know out in like North Carolina and stuff will grow a lot of their summer crops in like under shade cloth. That's the word I was looking for. And that can be, they can get really good production that way, even those are fruiting crops. But like over the winter, that may be a little different because you're losing a little sunlight there. But down in Florida, you lose a ton of sunlight. It kind of stays more steady for you all. Anyway, yeah, that's that. I don't know that the lot of options there, and the full shade is a little bit more difficult. You do want some amount of sunlight, but partial shade, there's a lot of opportunity there. All right, so let's see, Johnny Crash, Johnny Crash, yeah, that's right, Johnny Crash. Writes, hi Jesse, I want to grow cauliflower and broccoli for harvesting in fall/winter and spring. I have a tray ready to plant for the fall harvest. When should I start the ones I want to overwinter? Zone 8-ish, 8B-ish, and in the Netherlands. Oh, shouts to the Netherlands. I love the Netherlands. I mostly because of the soccer, but also just I find like the water management really fascinating. And anyway, talked about that before. Grow cauliflower and broccoli for harvesting in fall, winter, and spring. It's gonna be a little late for you all because you're pretty far north on the sunlight front. So if it's a faster broccoli, you could probably get away with it. If you wanted to overwinter it, and you're in zone 8B-ish, if you wanted to overwinter it and you could keep it covered, it's going to be tough. I mean, let's see. Do you have the... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that you could try it and then just keep it covered through the winter, because what's going to happen is if it heads up before winter, you're going to get and it gets frosted, you're going to end up with kind of like these like rotten broccoli heads or cauliflower heads, and they just get kind of like brown and then they just kind of die. It's gross. But if you can keep it from heading up before then, which it sounds like maybe you're in that spot, then you could have a nice head coming into the spring. You just have to make sure it's protected from the same thing in the spring when it starts to flower. And I've never done that. Like I've never overwintered a broccoli to harvest that early, So I don't know. Maybe somebody else would have some other insight on that. But I mean, there's no reason it necessarily wouldn't work because all of your brassicas are going to start flowering in the spring. It's just whether or not it would make a decent or better head that way. Could. I think it's worth a try. I mean, if nothing else, it's a cover crop. So yeah, let's see. Brackets, Petals, and Produce asks alternative to Sun Gold. Don't get me wrong. I still love Sun Gold. It's a great tomato. What was the one? Citron? What was the one I grew this year? It's an orange one that I think I got from Johnny's or High Mowing. For us, our cherry tomato selection is usually about color and me trying a few different things. I need to have a red, a yellow, or two yellows. I often grow one with the Sun Gold because I want that first Sun Gold, and then after that, like the yield just kind of gets meh. It gets okay. It's okay. It's good. But there's I want to call it Citron, something like that. I feel like there's one from Johnny's. And and then I pick out a black cherry, at least one red, at least one kind of like grape size one. And then I've been growing, a couple like the longer, what is that one called? A lot of the the longer grape style cherries. And those are great. The flavor's amazing. I think, that's it's a little bit of personal preference. There's no good answer there. Andrew writes, hi Jesse, is your fertility program mostly coming from compost and mulch, or do you also apply other amendments through foliar and fertigation? Mostly compost and mulch. I'd like to try, I feel like I'm not having enough compost. Like I just cannot make enough of my own. I'm going to buy some more compost, and I'm also going to start using a little bit of alfalfa meal again, I think next year, just to kind of, because I just don't feel like I get enough of the compost that I want. And I also just want to mix things up a little bit and try some different stuff. And then a little bit of like, I like to have some kelp every other year. That's not, based on anything necessarily, except for I just want to make sure the micronutrients are present, near the surface. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Like I don't do a lot, and sometimes that bites me, I think. But by and large, if I had more access to, if I made more of my own compost and really had the equipment to do it, I don't think I would use it basically anything but compost. I've had really good success doing that, but it also may just be our soil and our situation. Yeah. And then fertigation wise, like I will occasionally do, compost slurries or, some sort of like, what's the word? Fish hydrolysate with compost slurry or compost emulsion or compost tea or that sort of thing. Like I do like to mix those together. I don't do a lot of teas. I do more extracts, but yeah, you kind of get the idea. XCAL101 asks Alexander Isak or Newcastle. Whose side are you on? I don't know. I'm kind of siding with Newcastle a little bit on this one. I got to be honest with you. I feel a little bad for them. I don't know. I mean, but Isak's going to not go to Brighton, so I don't really care. So he, Newcastle and Liverpool both having troubles with it. It always helps me. So that I'm good with that. Ethenicus, that's fun. Writes, hey, Jesse, I'm in Central Texas, 8B, 9A. Do all crops need shade cloth when it's 95 plus degrees? I'm planting heat-tolerant plants according to the local ag guide, but plants are still struggling. Yeah, I mean, yeah. In this case, I would certainly think for at least part of the day it wouldn't hurt, or at least through the establishment period. That's hot. Like once you're putting those crops out there, their roots aren't in that soil like ready to take off. So like you really do need a good like couple weeks of shade to just protect them and keep them happy. I mean, for me, like you need shade cloth, for that sort of, for those sort of conditions. But the beauty is I was in Dallas, was it last year before? And we went to the farmer's market and I was like, where are all the farmers? Like, it is so nice. It's like 50 degrees out. And I know it gets colder there, but I was like, it's 50 degrees out. There's plenty of sunlight. Why is this thing not like just filled to the brim with crops? So like if it were me and I'm down in, Texas, Dallas, whatever, that area, I'm going heaviest at when, like I'm planting now like mad. And then in the summer, I'm not bothering because it's just, it's too hot. I would have cover crops out there and just let that. So I'm not having to use all that shade cloth and that sort of thing. I mean, that's a tough situation. Or, utilizing some more trees or taller plants or getting like bed of sorghum Sudan grass and then like some, in between maybe have a bed of something else and then a bed of sorghum Sudan grass. So you get a little, shade from those crops over the day. Like you can use sunflowers as well, just to kind of help, maybe think about ways in which you can use taller crops to kind of side up against, I don't even know if that's a term, but side up against, smaller, shorter crops, more sensitive crops. But yeah, that's a tough situation because the type of heat and sunlight you all get is pretty brutal. We're hot. We're to the point in this year where I was just like, what are we doing? This is bananas. I should just grow all fall, winter, and spring, and then just like take the summer and go to the beach. And but like that's not always possible. And it's not, our market is not quite as robust in the winter. But yeah, that's it's tough. All right, let's see. I got about 10 more minutes. I'm going to try and knock some of these out. Delights of the Earth writes, hello from Wisconsin and go Albion. Yeah, let's go. Keep up the great work, Jesse and Mike. Our sweet corn keeps falling. Do we need better windbreaks, or is there an issue with the roots in the soil? It's probably a little bit of both, but honestly, like tall sweet corn is just like a sitting duck for heavy winds in the middle of the summer. Your stronger roots would help, and maybe getting some like rubbing those seeds before you plant them with like compost, or you can buy like microbial mixes. You could talk to somebody like John Kempf, the Advancing Eco Agriculture may be able to help you out, just get those stronger root systems going. I don't use a lot of that stuff, but when with my longer season crops like that, I love to get some compost on there because I want a good microbial presence going into the soil. I want good fertility there as well, just so they can get their roots locked in really well. And maybe it's a little too tight a spacing. If they have a little bit more space, it may let a little bit more wind through, but also like lock them down a little better. They just have more room to spread their shoulders. And I don't know, I've not like looked specifically at that, but that's like kind of been what's helped us. And we've had years where, our corn gets knocked down and then kind of pops back up. So, yeah, but some years, like if you get, I saw, this is down in Arizona where they had the Haboob, is that what it's called? Where they had the wild wind, dust storms this week. Yeah, those I think they came through with like 70 mile per hour winds and stuff. And if you had corn in a situation like that, there's only so much soil health is going to do in that scenario. Wind breaks, sure, if you're in like a very windy scenario, that could be helpful. But yeah, go Albion. Daisy Ides writes, have you tried growing spoon tomatoes? I have not. I don't even actually know what that is, a spoon tomato. Somebody enlighten me in the comments and Michael send it to me. And maybe I have, and I don't know. Maybe I know it by a different name, but that sounds good. Lamb's Quarters Farms, a farming channel, writes, who would be your dream guest to nerd out with on the show? This is a good question. People have asked me this before, and I'm always like, I think I've had them, right? Like, I think I've interviewed a lot of the people that I've wanted to interview. I guess it would be honestly less about farming. It would probably be like, I'm really fascinated with writers and their processes. So or interviewers too. Like I remember some of my favorite podcasts to listen to are always people like Terry Gross, like just talking about, or even, Ira Glass, or just hearing about their processes for putting their podcasts and stuff together. I think that stuff is really fascinating. I don't know. I'm not really like I don't know. I don't have big ambitions to get stars on or anything like that. But honestly, that's just my personality is I like look at, I like people's processes, and I probably like my stars are not necessarily what everybody else's are. So I feel like I do that every time I pretty much have somebody on. Like having John D. Liu on was super cool to me. Having an ecologist of that level, and I've interviewed so many people over the years that I just, really appreciate and adore their work. And even somebody like, Helen Attow, like that was a really cool interview. And to me, I'm like that was, this was years ago. She wrote the Ecological Farm book. Somewhere I have it back here. Yeah. She wrote this book. She's awesome. And that to me is like, getting to talk to a living legend, and just like, she's done such great work. And, or even Pam Dawling, those are like my legends, I guess. There's my hair. So Keedy, I'm going to see if I can get my cat to come over here. Nope, she is not interested. Yep, never mind. Sorry, y'all. I'm going to try and have her do a cat meow. Not going to happen. Let's see. I've got a few more questions, and then I've got about 6 more minutes before I got to go. Got to go harvest some basil as I do on Wednesdays. Scott Waxman asks, how do you adjust, if you do at all, your fertilizing/amendment schedule when there are monsoon rains like this year, as opposed to the drought or drier weather you are currently experiencing? How do I adjust the fertilizing? Well, oftentimes I regret not having more mulch down. I don't know if that's an adjustment as much as it's just like, I wish I'd done that. Now, you don't always know, because in the spring, if I'd had more mulch down, I would have been cursing it, right? Because it was just so much rain, like it would have been a problem, but it would have helped right now. Oftentimes, this time of year is when I find, under hay at least, that we have the most moisture. So yeah, that's I think, it's hard. It's hard to do it all right. I think the best thing that mitigates all weather, right? And I think about this all the time on like a large scale, is, living plant roots, mulches, and just good soil health. And that mitigates so many issues with heavy rains to droughts, right? Like everything in between. So yeah, for me, it's like the practices are kind of the climate/weather mitigation strategy, and simultaneously it's what we find produces the least weeds and the best produce. So that, yeah, it's kind of like our practices are the way we address those issues. And let's see. S. Hoback writes, how should one go about tips saving seed for the first time? I would like to reduce the need for store-bought seed minus trying new varieties. Bought your book, value your thoughts. Thumbs up. Cool. Thank you. So how should one go about saving seeds for the first time? I think pick a couple that make sense. Like tomatoes are relatively easy to save seed on. Look for plants that aren't diseased. Look for the plants that taste the best to you, that you like the production, that the style of the plant fits your production methods well. I wouldn't pick some of the more complicated stuff like corn necessarily because it's cross-pollinates so well, or like winter squash. Winter squash is not necessarily complicated if you know your winter squash families, but just choose the easy ones. Beans, peppers are relatively easy. Tomatoes are relatively easy. Starting with those easy ones, peas. Pick a handful and then just start there and see what you think. Lettuces can be a little bit more complicated because it takes a little bit more cleaning to do them. Those are some good options to start with. But also check out Dan Brisebois' book, which I'm sure is also somewhere right behind me. Sometimes I just see it right off the bat, but I'm not seeing it. But anyway, yeah, Dan's The Seed Farmer. Check that out. He will help you not only think about like what seeds make sense for saving for you, but also like if you want to turn it into a business. That's like an awesome place to start. Wildkeeper writes, have you ever met Wendell Berry? We have met Wendell Berry. My wife and I went and had like an afternoon hangout session with he and Tanya Berry back in 2013 maybe. We just wrote him a letter back when he was doing these like Sunday things where he would sit down with people. And I don't know if he maybe still does that. I don't know. But we wrote him a letter and just like said, hey, we have some questions about like how to survive as farmers. And he invited us one Sunday afternoon to spend like an hour or so there up in Port Royal. Which one is the one that's the non-fantasy one? Port William? Port Royal? One of those is his fantasy version of his city, of his town, up there in Henry County. And yeah, we got to sit down with him and the thing that like and I don't remember a lot of the details. I think we wrote a blog post about it for roughdraftfarmstead.com a long time ago, but like I don't remember a lot of the details. I just remember being blown away with how he talks exactly like he writes. Like his sentence structure, the way it comes out of his brain is exactly like the way it comes out of his mouth is exactly what it looks like on the page, and vice versa. Like it's wild. But yeah, I mean, he's one he's the kind of person that I've seen him at a few conferences and stuff. Like he's done the Organic Association of Kentucky conference, several times. We got to see him there. And, I just think about like his it's his sentence structure that just like blows me away. The way he thinks, like, there's this thing I often think about that he wrote. What is it? It's, hold on, let me get a drink of water and I'll tell you. There are not enough rich and powerful people to consume the whole world. For that, the rich and powerful need the help of countless ordinary people. And it's just like these simple concepts that he boils down to these really, really evocative sentences that I've always really admired about his work. I know he's said some controversial stuff in the past occasionally, but like he's just been like he's been really a great figure in Kentucky for helping with agriculture and. Yeah, and find him to be him. And I actually, the other thing about that story is that Tanya Berry is awesome. She was amazing. She was just like underrated. Does not get enough attention. The best. So yeah, that was a really fun time. And we were really lucky to get to do that. So all right, I will take this last question from William Curry, and then we'll pop out of here, and we'll catch you all tomorrow for the live, or for the non-live, for the normal. William Curry writes, "Can you recommend a biodynamic wine? I want to see what the hype is." Let's see. A lot of wines that you wouldn't expect are biodynamic. I would write to, I would just go to I don't even know. Like I stopped drinking over a year ago. So there are probably some that have popped up since then. There are people out, oh gosh, there's so many. What is his name? I would go to a wine store and just ask the clerk and see like what's good, what's really, really, because Micklin's Minkling out of Austria is one that pops to mind. They're a really interesting winemaker. They're right there on like the Hungarian border. That's a fun one. I remember we got to visit. I went to Austria. I've been to a few wine trips, and that was one. And we got to go visit those wineries and that winemaker. And I thought that was really cool. Like they were not pruning their vines in one area, and their neighbor, and they were getting like lower yields, obviously, but their neighbors were furious. Like they would like burn these vines down. They felt it was like just an absolute abomination. And I was always like, well, these ones are the best now. And they do beer too. You've probably seen them. They're in the United States, but they were doing beer at the time, but I don't think they were selling it here. But that could be a fun one to try. But yeah, just go hit up a wine clerk and just be like, hey, like what's good? Because that to me is always the best recommendation, comes from the people who live it every day. And like, they've been to the tastings, they've met the winemakers. Like a lot of the people that I knew 20 years ago when I was working in wine, a lot of them have retired, or they're a lot older now. So yeah, I would start there. Also, anything from Ginny and Francois, love their that importer. So I don't know if they import all over the United States yet, or at the moment, but they bring in a lot of cool stuff. Not all of it is biodynamic, but I've worked with them, when they were doing tastings in New York, and they were awesome. Anyway, thank you all for listening. I should probably do my little outro thing, should I not? Let's see. Yeah, well, I think I can find it. Let's see. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can make sure you can learn about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. It's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors, and if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and texting me all these questions. Shouts to you, Mike. Also, we're going to have a thing about the theme music tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can't hear, but you will hear it tomorrow. Pick up a hat like this, or like you can see, we got the new beanies. We got the Soil Nerd beanie. You can find that at notillgrowers.com, or the No Till Growers beanie, the hat, the corduroy. Buying those, that helps us to just keep doing this stuff and keeping this information free and open to the public, which is like our goal. And then big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-till-growers, where at a certain level, or if you bump up from one level to another, you usually get a shout on the show, but we'll do those tomorrow. So thank you all for listening and or watching, and for coming and hanging out with us. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.